So, hi folks, I'm Jonathan. Daniel got in touch with me 8 or 10 weeks ago to ask if I'd do a presentation for you today about the Double Diamond. I'm not quite sure how he found me, because I think like most designers, I'm sort of pretty much invisible. Although I'm 40 years into practice as a designer, I don't very easily pop up when people are trying to find me or the work that I've done. But I've been very lucky in those 40 years to have had some connections with some great organizations and take part in small teams that develop some, what I think is really cool work. As I said, Daniel asked me to talk about the Double Diamond. I've framed the presentation an icon or a cliche, and I'm going to explain why I framed it like that to you in a moment. First of all, having said that not many people will know me, I'm sort of quite difficult to find. My business name is Design Mine. You can read all sorts of things into that name. And in the image you can see here, you can see things that interest me, have interested me for my lifetime, really, and have influenced my approach to design. And also, if you have time to look at the photo, you see lots of things that I've actually been involved with as well, whether it's work with Design Council, work with Luma Institute over in Pittsburgh, who have a methods-based system for innovation, lots of other things as well. So that slide represents all my interests and my work in just one picture. So why the title? Well, and sort of starting to reflect on the Double Diamond and the history of the Double Diamond after Daniel got in touch with me, it brought to mind a comment of a service designer that I met through the Design Council Design Academy work about a couple of years ago in 2018. And he was asking what the base of the program was, what was the platform for the program. And I explained some of Design Council's new work to him. And I said that it was a wraparound, the Double Diamond. And he said, no, the Double Diamond, that old cliche. And I thought, that old cliche? Well, first of all, I hadn't really thought about it as being old, but I guess because it was the Double Diamond, as it's presented by Design Council, was designed and developed in 2003, 2004. And I guess that some people that will seem quite a long time ago. But cliche, that set me back a little bit. And I thought I needed to just think, is the Design Council a cliche or not? And that gave me the title for the presentation. So the Double Diamond, an icon or a cliche. I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about the origins of the Double Diamond quite quickly. I'm going to talk about using the Double Diamond and is the Double Diamond still relevant today? And I'm going to call out across those two sections, using it and is it still relevant? I'm going to call out 6 links, references, approaches that I think reflect how you can actually use the Double Diamond to good effect. So let's get going. So first of all, the origins of the Double Diamond. There was a team at Design Council in 2003, 2004, originally pulled together by a fantastic guy, Clive Grinyer, and then in that period led by another great guy, Richard Eiserman. And when Richard came to Design Council as the head of design and innovation, the director of design and innovation, he looked at the spectrum of work that we were doing at the time, and we were doing a lot of work to catalyze design and innovation in manufacturing industry. We were doing work to accelerate the commercialization of science, and we were doing very early work linked to service design, but particularly focused at influencing design for policy. And he thought the work was great that we were doing, but he was surprised that at the time, Design Council didn't really talk about design process. And he said, that's not acceptable. He said, Design Council has to have a way of describing design process. And that was the challenge that he set to his team. I've always been independent from Design Council, but I've worked, lucky enough to work quite closely with them for almost 25 years now. And I was part of the people he was talking to were his design strategists and the design research team. There's probably 8 of us there or thereabouts around the table. And we took on his challenges, started to think about, well, how would we do that? What would we do? And we started to deconstruct the work that we were doing at the time in those domains and to see if there's any patterns that might lead us towards how we'd choose to describe design process. What I don't think many of us knew at the time was when Richard asked us the question, he'd already been exposed to divergent and convergent methodologies that were being used in design and innovation, but also in business. So people like Gary Hamel were talking about divergent, convergent models. So there's quite a bit of precedent. I'll talk about that very quickly. And then as we move forward to today, the double diamond is still evolving. And of course, it's evolving alongside lots of other methodologies as well, other design process methods. Here's an example from work by Osborne and Parnes. This image is from a source in 1976, but I understand that the work that those two guys did was originated in the 50s. And you can see there, it's very much a multiple diamond process flow there, sort of going through from the problem all the way through to action. Go again. Many of you will know of Victor Papanek and may have read his book, Design for the Real World. It was one of the seminal texts for me. I was lucky enough to do design at school for about 3 years in the early 1970s. I really am that old. Design A-level ran in a tiny number of schools in the UK. I was lucky enough to do design, and Papanek was introduced to me at the time. And in fact, I met him. He came and critiqued our work in Manchester at the school when he was based in Manchester. And in Papanek's book, if you go to it, you'll see that he has a divergent, convergent model for innovation in his book as well. And I'm just calling out a couple of examples, and actually there's quite a few that predate the Design Council's work by quite a period. But I don't think myself or the team that were working for Richard were that aware of some of the precedent. I think we were largely working in innocence, if you like, of some of the prior art. IDEO we're also talking about divergence and convergent thinking, and I think they did this diagram at around the same time as we did the double diamond. It's interesting that Richard actually had worked at IDEO before he came to the Design Council. So there's quite some precedent for the origins. I'm not going to go into it any more than that, but if you're students of these processes, you might want to dig into it some more. And this is Richard. We had an exchange 18 months or 2 years ago because I wrote an article about the origins that the Design Council has published. The links at the end of this presentation. This is what he said. He acknowledges that what we did with the double diamond was to codify it. He thinks that it was important work. I think probably it is today, but he acknowledges that we were certainly standing on the shoulders of giants. There were people not just doing divergent and convergent work, but in our orbit, points of reference that I don't think we'd have done what we did as a team without being able to tap into the great work other people had done. It's still evolving. This was a screen grab I did the other day. I just put in divergent and convergent models and just grabbed these images. And there could have been hundreds of images on that screen. And if you explore a little bit more, you'll see that well, some of them are very simple. Some people making the double diamond really quite complex, which really intrigues me because I think at its heart, I think it's a very simple, very accessible model, and probably is at its best when it's not complicated. So using the double diamond, I'm going to give 6 points of reference here for how I think there's sort of a build as to how you might choose to use the double diamond. First of all, I think, and maybe I would say this, I think it's a great visualization of design process. This is how the Design Council published images of the double diamond in 2004. So this was the point of reference we had. And I remember at Design Council at the time, we had these images printed out in sheets of different sizes from sort of A4 reference through to, I think, A1 sheets that we could use in our own work or in presentations. And people like Andrea Siodmok, who was the head of design research at Design Council, she would have been instrumental at the time in talking to global audiences when presenting Design Council's work and using this image alongside other reference to Design Council's work and talking to a global audience about the double diamond. But the beauty there, I think, is that it is just a great visualization. And that snapshot with those 4 stages, discover, define, develop, and deliver, The snapshot I showed from that image grab from a Google search a few slides ago, if you dig into those images, you'll find that lots of people have taken basically that image and have then played tunes with it. They've changed the language to suit their own work. They've changed the language to suit the work in other domains like service design or policy. They've maybe added extra diamonds on, but it's very clearly drawn from that very simple image as an outset. So I think, number one, the double diamond is a great visualization of the design innovation process. And it's a great place to start if you're starting to question your own process, or equally starting to critique equally valid processes that other people have done. I've found that using the double diamond as an introduction to design thinking is incredibly powerful. Design thinking is quite the thing, isn't it now? Sort of, it's a global movement. Organizations of all types, all sizes, in lots of different domains and sectors are looking at how they can incorporate approaches to design thinking into their work. And a lot of people struggle to explain the place of design thinking to an organization and to explain how you might start to integrate it into your work. And I found in work that I did in 2014, I was working with a bank for Luma Institute, and I got a question in Asia from a team in the bank when they were asking about why they should not just be taking the brief that they'd been set and just responding to the brief, and why I was encouraging them to question the brief. And I found myself drawing the double diamond in reverse to justify the place of design thinking and why you should probably, all designers should be thinking, are we actually trying to solve the right problem? And this is how I did the build. You will get, if you're a designer, if you're involved in design projects, you'll get a brief, a design spec, maybe. You get something really cool, like a kickoff canvas, the sort of thing that the BBC might use for their online development. And you'll be asked to take this on and deliver this project. What I suggested was that if you just go in a straight line project, in some instances that might be okay and it will give you a result, but perhaps we should be questioning whether we should be exploring more widely the opportunity that we've been given in the brief, in the requirements spec, and sort of thinking about maybe doing more research, exploring more widely, prototyping and testing very early, and then converging on the actual solution. So there's this divergence and convergence, this flare and focus is almost certainly going to give us a better project. However, if we say, or we question, are we actually trying to solve the right problem? And we go back to basics, that gives us the first diamond, and it has exactly the same attributes as the second diamond. Again, research, prototype and test very early, but actually this time converge on the brief, the spec, the kickoff canvas, whatever it is that you use in your organization. You'll have be set up in a much better way to actually take on the project and to deliver the final solution. And that then obviously creates the double diamond. So I find when I'm meeting organizations or individuals for the first time that are questioning the place and the value of design innovation, and particularly embracing approaches to design thinking, I find that building the double diamond in reverse is a fantastic way to bring an audience with you to understand why actually we should perhaps not just be doing straight line projects, but we should be much more adventurous and questioning the challenge that we've been set. There is a little bit of a health warning, I think, with the double diamond there that's embodied within that illustration. And that's, of course, it's symmetrical. And very often people will say, but you know, do we have to spend that much time on questioning the challenge? Because it looks symmetrical. People think, well, if we usually spend a week, a month, or a year on delivering the solution, does this mean we're going to spend a week, a month, or a year on actually revisiting the brief. And of course, no, the health warning is, it's like they say in American car advertisements, your mileage will vary. The shape of your double diamond will vary depending upon the nature of the project you're taking on. Your process model, your visualization of the double diamond will almost certainly not be symmetrical. For the real projects, it'll take on a slightly different form depending upon the constraints you've got, the time and the pace you need to have within the project itself. So my third point of reference for using the double diamond is within project planning. And this is work from a colleague of mine, David Townsend. David is also a design council design associate like myself. He and I work with a tiny team on a little group of associates called What Could Be. And we did a presentation for Mural, a webinar for Mural last summer. And as we were preparing that presentation, David unpacked the double diamond in a different way. And I think that this is ace. I think it is so, so useful. So what did he do? What David said is that there's a bandwidth of types of projects where there's a degree of certainty at one end of the spectrum, and there's uncertainty at the other end of the spectrum. And what he said is that you can map the elements of the double diamond against that spectrum. He said that if we are certain about the approach that we should be using, then that straight line approach, you remember when I just deconstructed the double diamond a moment ago when I was positioning it? He said that straight line approach, if you're certain about what you're doing, actually in many organizations, perhaps for a considerable amount of time, it is absolutely okay to go in a straight line from taking on the brief to delivering the solution. What he then said is actually within that bandwidth of uncertainty to certainty, we maybe need to expand the second diamond and say, well, if we're pretty confident about the brief, but we think there's a degree of exploration to do around the development and the delivery of the solution, then we should probably be thinking about our project operating in the second diamond. What he then said is that if there's a high degree of uncertainty, then you should certainly be exploring the first diamond, that discover and define diamond, to make sure that you're going to be setting the right brief, the right project spec to take you through the solution. And actually it's the double diamond in all its glory, if you like, that you should be embracing if the nature of the project is uncertain. And I think that's a great point of reference. So when I get any project now, this sounds a bit silly, but I imagine myself in the middle of the double diamond, and I think about this diagram, and I think, what sort of project have I been handed? And with the people I'm working with, I use this as a point of reference. I ask, is it safe to work in a straight line? Should we be exploring the second diamond? Or actually, is there a high degree of uncertainty? And it helps shape and frame the type of project that I'm taking on. David went a step further though. We know of work by a guy called Eddie Obeng, and Eddie Obeng is a sort of a project management master. You'll find lots of his work online. He's published lots of books, and we've always been really drawn to one of his models. He talks about this 2x2, where in the top right-hand corner, when you know what you need to do and you know how to do it, he talks about those being paint by numbers projects. And our straight line project taken from the double diamond, that fits into a paint by numbers approach that maps with Eddie's work. He says that if we know what we want to do but we don't know how to do it, well, if you just think about what David's sketch a moment ago, that's where the second diamond sits. You know, we know what it is we want to do, but we don't know how to do it. So we're going to have to explore the methodology for actually delivering the solution. And Eddie would call that a quest project. If we know how we're going to do it, but we don't know what we're going to do, well, then we're operating we need to start in the first diamond. And Eddie calls that a movie project. If you think about how people do movies, all the kit around a movie is well understood. We know how we're going to make a movie, but we need a script and the right actors to actually be able to deliver it. So Eddie calls that a movie project. And if we don't know how and we don't know what, then Eddie Oben calls that a foggy project. And I think that paint by numbers, movie, foggy, quest, mapping on a 2x2, but deployed to the double diamond, again, a really powerful way of thinking about what sort of projects have we got in our portfolio and how should we be addressing them. And for most organizations, I think you could strongly argue that if you look at what's on the go in terms of design innovation in an organization at any point in time, actually, there should be something in every one of those quadrants. It would be a sign of a healthy business, healthy organization. So my last 2 or 3 points of reference, and I've put these under, is the double diamond still relevant today? And obviously this was stimulated by that quote from the service designer when he said that old cliche, and it made me think, well, is it weary, or is the double diamond still relevant? So first of all, the double diamond sits within a framework for innovation, and this is Design Council work, and it's very current. This image is taken from some work that myself and Ellie Runcie, who was a director at Design Council for many years, we were working with a client at the end of 2015, early 2016, and as we were working with that client, we had been thinking about how we drew all the Design Council's work into one place. We've been thinking about it for quite a while. And as we were preparing the work for this, the current client, we had a bit of an aha moment or an epiphany, and we saw a way that we could draw all of the Design Council's work together, all the good stuff we've been doing really since 2002, and just draw it into one place. And that's one of the first sketches of what's called the Design Council's Framework for Innovation. And there you can see the double diamond at the heart of that illustration. It's developed again and has been recently published, only just published, towards the end of last year. Kat Drew, who's the Chief Design Officer at Design Council, she did a presentation to the Service Design Conference, I think in last October, and she presented the framework as it's been resolved today. And what you can see here is a number of things if you dig into this. First of all, the double diamond is at the heart of the framework, and the double diamond here has loops and arrows around it, so it's suggesting very strongly that the double diamond is not a straight line process. I've never thought it's a straight line process, but it's when people just see the double diamond presented to them, often people say, yeah, but that's just end to end. I really don't think it is, but this diagram makes it very real, very apparent that you're constantly looping back and questioning. It isn't just a straight line process through a series of very regulated steps in the double diamond. You can see that it acknowledges we're always addressing a challenge and we're always focused on an outcome. It calls out a set of design principles, and there's lots of different ways of looking at this. And I know when I go around different design studios, I see 4 or 6 or 8 or 10 design principles on the wall in different studios around the world. Here, the Design Council calls out 4 key design principles that are sort of the spirit of design thinking behind all of the work that they do: being people-centered, communicating visually and inclusively, collaborating and co-creating, and iterating, always make, test, learn, make, test, learn, make, test, learn. At the bottom there, you can see it references a methods bank. The Design Council has had a methods bank since the double diamond was created. At the same time as it was created in work led in Richard's team by a guy called Chris Van Stone and Anna White. They also drew out of those of us that were at the Design Council at the time all of the methods that we were using and the different projects that we were doing in the 3 domains that I mentioned earlier: in business, in science and technology, and that early work in policy and politics and service. And we sort of pulled everything together into a methods bank. And the suggestion there in that image is that you've always got this methods bank, this sort of filing cabinet of tools and techniques that you use as a designer, and you pull from that methods bank and build your path through the double diamond by choosing and using the methods in response to the questions and the hypotheses that you want to test as you're moving the project or you're progressing the project through the double diamond. And then finally, there's a really important strategic piece that you see above, which is the engagement, the communication throughout the project. And that changes from when you first start to think about the challenge all the way through to the outcome of the project. And I think a lot of people, when they're planning projects and when they're researching and actually undertaking projects, sometimes don't concentrate enough on how the nature of the engagement changes throughout a project. It's a really critical strategic piece and makes a big difference to success. And then at the bottom, it calls out leadership, the final piece of the Design Council's framework for innovation. And that's creating the conditions, the culture for innovation, and connecting into the wider business. It can't all be about design. So how do we evaluate the project? How do we integrate with Agile and Lean? How do we wrap and embed the design and innovation within the routines that any business or organization has? And that's sort of flags that link there. So that's the Design Council's framework for innovation. And if there's a link at the end of this presentation to a blog article by Kat Drew. And in that, you can see the build of the framework for innovation if you want to find out more about it. What you can't do with the Design Council's framework for innovation is fill it in. When I first did the work that was led by Ellie Runcie, or played a part in the work that was led by Ellie, and we pulled all that work together, I thought we'd done something that was maybe the design innovation equivalent of the business model canvas. And I've always seen the business model canvas as being about certainty, about how you shape and form everything behind your business, but actually with a high degree of certainty. And I think the world that we work in, when we're close to design innovation, involved in design innovation, I think we're mostly dealing with uncertainty. And if you think about David's unpacking of project types, that really throws into relief and helps you think about how you're going to address uncertainty. And what I realized is that actually the framework for innovation that we created at Design Council can't be filled in. So it doesn't quite sit alongside the business model canvas. So again, working with David and other colleagues, all of whom have had some connection with Design Council, but also Luma Institute, the V&A in Dundee and other places, we thought, well, how could we do something that is more canvas-like? And this is what we did. It's back to having a challenge and being able to work with that challenge. We think that if you've got a challenge, maybe the first thing to do is to understand who the people are that are connected with it, what the vision is right at the outset of a project. Where do we want to get to? What impact do we want? In the bottom left of that 2 by 2, you can see the challenges which fall out of that high-level challenge, the problems that we've got to address, and there's usually a huge list. We actually use this as a method in all of our work. We call it a purpose primer. It works a little bit like a SWOT, and it's a fantastic way to just break the ice in any project and just get the team to explore the nature of a project. I should just flag at this moment that actually behind each one of those 4 quadrants sits one or more design methods that allows you to do a deeper dive into the detail. If I nudge those apart, if I separate them, then I can start to build a double diamond again, because the double diamond connects those 2 halves of the purpose primer. The double diamond joins the design process, joins those 2 elements. And I can start to think about, well, what sort of project, again, are we trying to do? If it is just about sorting out the solution, then we've got the challenge, then I've got it. It's starting to build a map, a canvas for exploring the challenge in more detail. I've got something I can fill in, something that will lead me more easily to the methods I'll use within the project. If I open it more, because actually we've a greater degree of uncertainty and we need to explore the problem space, then again, you can see the full double diamond starts to form a part of the canvas. If I draw from the Design Council's framework for innovation, and at this time I'm using the term storytelling, I think how will we communicate over the course of the project across each one of those 4 stages: discover, define, develop, and deliver. And then the final section, how will we integrate this within the organization? How will we deliver the project and monitor progress? And what we've done is turn that into a canvas that you can download. This has been in the public domain for 12 months or so. we think it's complementary to the business model canvas. I think it's, I hope you agree, a really interesting use of the double diamond. To the nature of the presentation, I think it's very current. I think lots of people that are involved in the world of design thinking are looking at ways to structure their projects. We're not saying this is the way. What we're saying is that this is a way that works for us. And what I like is the fact that from that work that we did at Design Council back in 2003 and 2004, I think it's a great wrapper for the double diamond. I think it's entirely appropriate. The double diamond is at its heart. The last thing, now I've not got slides to go with this. I think any one of those things, those first 5 points of reference, I think help with critique or evaluation of design process, of design innovation projects. I think the double diamond and some of those references can be used to question management projects, maybe shaping business models and things like that. It's fantastic support for critique and evaluation used the right way. And I'd be happy to expand on that separately to this conversation if it's of interest to anybody. So where does that take me to? This was the question that I set myself for the presentation: a double diamond, an icon, or a cliche. And I thought I should probably go back to an English dictionary and just look at these words and just make sure that I was happy I was interpreting them the right way. So in brief, an icon is important as a symbol of a particular thing. And I guess you could say that that original visual of the double diamond, or just sketching a double diamond, as we could all do very quickly, maybe it is iconic, but I think that's possibly a bit grand. And it possibly takes the view of the double diamond in a different way. So I'm not sure it is an icon. The service designer who said, oh, that old cliche, a phrase or an opinion that's overused, shows a lack of original thought. I think that's unfair. I couldn't articulate it properly when it was said to me in 2018, but I don't think the Design Council is a cliche. I think if somebody thinks it's a cliche, it's because actually they haven't really dug into where it's come from, or possibly more importantly, how it was originally used when the Design Council published it and how it's been used subsequently. And I found myself thinking that maybe within the world of design, I'm not saying it's everywhere, but certainly within the world of design innovation and tapping into management, I think maybe it's ubiquitous, if that isn't too grand a statement. I've been surprised, the places I've worked with widely varying audiences. I'm very lucky to have worked in lots of different countries, particularly connected with introducing Luma's system for innovation and doing design council work and some of the work we're doing for What Could Be, and presenting to many design audiences that are not design audiences and asking people, if you come across the double diamond, and nearly always somebody or a number of people, in some instances everybody, says, yeah, we've seen the double diamond, we've come across that. So I think it may be ubiquitous, but I'm not quite bold enough to claim it. I'm going to give the last word to Anna White. Anna was a part of the team that worked for Richard at Design Council when we did the double diamond. She worked with Chris Van Stone. They led the project, and there was 6 or 8 of us who were working with them, who were involved in the wider work that we were doing. People like Jill Wildman, who's one of the most human of human designers, Andrea Seldmuck I've mentioned, lots of other people involved at the time, involved in sort of taking design into systems now and all sorts of other interesting places. I'm giving the last word to Anna. I think what stands out is the last note there, and reflecting, Anna said, what's nice though, is that the design world embraced the model as well. And I think that's why maybe it is ubiquitous. So there's some references there and some links that if you want to follow up on anything that I've said, you can do. It's been great. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to put this talk together, because it's taken me back to think about the people that I worked with and the work that we did. It was a really useful thing for me to do personally, I have to say. So thanks, Daniel, for asking me. And if you've got any questions, then you are welcome to get in touch with me through that link afterwards. So thank you very much, folks. And I think we've got time for some Q&A, haven't we?
Yes, it's very good. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for your session. We are very pleased to hear you. And so I think now we could open the discussion to the participants. And so questions are welcome. Talk a little bit with Jonathan. So any questions? So I have one. It's not a question, it's more a reflection. I read an article by Kat Drew from the Design Council with the title, it's more or less like Double Diamond, the 15 years on, or something like that, where she refers something like the value of the Double Diamond is not on the outcome, or is not in the outcome, or in the process. It's interesting to understand that. I think to me the interesting thing it's the outcome, not all the process of this Double Diamond. So you have these opinions. This Double Diamond is on the outcome and not on the process, or you have a different opinion from Kat Drew?
So I think I can't. So I could give you a number of different answers very quickly. The Double Diamond was originally done to define process. That was Richard's challenge, and that's why it is. That's why it happened. That's why I can't get away from the fact process has to be a point of reference for the Double Diamond. I think in what Kat said, I think she said something to the effect that the Double Diamond is has a huge influence on collaboration and co-creation. It also brings people together and helps the conversation, and I would totally agree with that. But then I have to give a health warning again. You know, you talk about outcomes. I started work as a product designer, so I've had a career in two halves. The first half was in the world of design thinking and doing sort of work that relates to things like the Double Diamond and running programs for Design Council and others, working with Luma Institute. But as a product designer, I was always focused on delivering something. And I cannot get away from the fact, I think it's a fact, that anybody who's involved in the world of design has to be focused on doing something that makes a difference. And I think that makes a difference at some scale. I don't think it's about just staying within the Double Diamond. I don't think it's just about, it's good to just collaborate and co-create. You're doing something for a purpose. You're doing something to drive a result. Luma Institute say that you're doing something that matters to make a difference. And I can't get away from that, that I have to be focused on the outcome. And I'm very happy with all the stuff that you're involved with to get there. But I would feel like a failure as a designer if there wasn't a result that had some sort of impact. It doesn't have to be economic, could be social, could be policy, it could be peace of mind, but there's got to be a result.
Okay, thank you so much. So I have here on the chat one question that is from Jan Eckert, our keynote speaker from the last edition of EIMAD. Very welcome, Jan.
Hi, everyone. Hi there.
Hi, how are you doing?
Great. First of all, thank you for your talk, Jonathan. And I've got a question regarding that new canvas you just showed at the very last part of your presentation. And I wondered, could you tell us a little bit more about the impact part of that? Because many of our MA students, they love the Double Diamond and they use it a lot, they customize it. And something that we try to kind of understand together with them, how to foresee and monitor or even evaluate the impact of their design interventions. So I got really curious when I saw that impact part on that new canvas there.
Okay, so, well, if I put my product design hat on, when I was in industry, whenever I started a project, I had some sense of what it was I had to achieve. Now, because I was a product designer and I was in industry, so I was designing things. I was worked for a British toy brand for a lot of years, designing toys. I've designed things like bathroom fittings. I've designed lots of industrial products. And whenever I started a project, I didn't start it with a completely blank sheet of paper. I always had some points of reference as to where we had to get to. There'd be some numbers. There'd be they might reference a product that pre-existed and how much better we had to do that than that. It had to be more profitable. We had to sell more. It had to be in the portfolio for a number of years longer. It had to be ready in 12 months, not 2 years. There were always economic points of reference. It might have been things like increasing the places where something would be sold and things like that. So there's loads of numbers related things to do with impact. If you think about designing products, I think that applies to service as well. I think if you're developing a service, there'll be loads of numbers related things you can draw out. So I think with your students, sticking to numbers, I think I'd be pushing them to sort of think broadly, and maybe because they're doing a project in education, they've got to speculate a little bit, but just think, what do you think the numbers would be that would be wrapped around a successful outcome of your project, and paint a picture as to what good would look like, what success would look like from the numbers point of view. Alongside that, and I think this is really relevant today with the places that design's going, and I'm involved in lots of service design projects. I've influenced design for policy for the Home Office here in the UK. I think there's lots of softer things as well to do with things like transparency, the ease of access for the public to a service, or the public to influence policy and things like that. So there's lots of softer measures, things that you can describe in some way that will tell you, help you understand from the outset what impact means. I have never done a project ever without having at least a simple understanding or expectation as to what the impact should be of my work.
Great, thank you. May I add on upon that question? Do you think then some sort of evidence-based research methods, be it quantitative or qualitative, should be integrated more into design education then?
Yes, and so I think particularly qualitative work. So I think that is crucial, and maybe there isn't enough of it. So being able to undertake what I would call design research, not a lot, but to get out and meet people and to be able to gather data, qualitative data, I've done 100%. I don't think people do. You don't need to do a lot, but you need to do some really, really well thought through work. So yes.
Great, thanks.
Okay, it's a pleasure. I think Katja had a question, didn't you?
Yeah, it was also a comment and a question. What is curious, when I started my studies about the design process, going back to history, the first model reference came from creative problem solving for Buffalo, one of the models you showed. And okay. their contribution really was that the first time somebody visualized the divergent convergent parts or moments of the process. And then I found the double diamond. So I thought, oh, that's really a nice model for design, because in design, when I studied, were still some models from Bonziepe had some, I don't know if you know this, and then we had all this recipe for Monari, but that was all a bit, you had a problem and a solution, it was a straight way, and suddenly there came something more open and more evolutive, let me say so. And then later I found other models by the D School, by IDEO and Hasso-Plattner Institute. And then I wanted to bring that to Portugal. So I tried to translate it from English to Portuguese. So they had a problem with the deliver, because in Portuguese it's with entrega. And so then I came to an own model. I developed in a form more of a spiral to show the evolution and the iteration, which the double diamond actually don't have. But I honestly, I really think it doesn't matter which model you're working with. I mean, we are working with our model, of course, because we have our own. But I always say it's not better than others. It's just an orientation. Some people, I don't know if there's a study who compared models, which model works better or not. That could be a question if you know something about that. But actually, I would have done the same question than Jen did about the impact, because I also looked at this canvas that was new for me, actually. Because also we are working now in social innovation. So measuring the impact is something which I really puzzle with. It's really difficult. And then also another question, which a lot of companies are doing, they say, but do you think that if we work with this model, we do better than without? And I normally say, I don't know. Because I can't measure it. I can't work with the same group with the model and without the model, or with two different models, because if I work with two groups at the same time, they are not the same people. So it's very difficult really to evaluate if a model makes the outcome better. Perhaps the process, then you can get the feedback from people who are working with, if they felt well orientated in the process, etc. But I never found studies, scientific studies about that, which would help to answer that question. So actually, this is my question to you. Do you know about the comparative studies between models?
So, well, no, I don't, because I'm a very practical designer. So I work with what works for me. And I'm very comfortable that the points of reference I have work well for me.